For centuries, the Western world has been deliberately kept ignorant of the true nature of human existence and the soul's journey through multiple lifetimes. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, the enigmatic founder of the Theosophical Society, dedicated her life to unveiling these ancient mysteries that had been suppressed by religious and political authorities who feared the revolutionary implications of this knowledge. According to Blavatsky's teachings, derived from her claimed contact with the Mahatmas, highly evolved spiritual beings residing in Tibet, humanity possesses not one soul, but multiple subtle bodies that comprise our complete spiritual anatomy. This profound understanding was systematically erased from Western consciousness during the early centuries of Christianity, when the doctrine of reincarnation was declared heretical and those who taught it faced persecution and death. The suppression of this knowledge was not accidental but deliberate. Religious institutions recognized that if people understood their true spiritual nature and the concept of multiple lifetimes, they would no longer live in fear of eternal damnation or rely solely on religious authorities for salvation. Instead, they would take personal responsibility for their spiritual evolution and understand that they are the architects of their own destiny through countless incarnations. Blavatsky revealed that this ancient wisdom formed the core of all mystery schools throughout history, from the Egyptian temples to the Greek mysteries, from the Jewish Kabbalah to the Hindu Vedas. The knowledge was preserved in secret societies and esoteric schools, passed down through initiates who understood the dangerous nature of revealing these truths to an unprepared world. The time for secrecy, however, had come to an end. Blavatsky claimed that humanity had reached a stage in its collective evolution where these teachings could once again be openly shared. The Theosophical movement was born from this urgent need to restore humanity's understanding of its true spiritual heritage and prepare for the next phase of human development. This forbidden knowledge would challenge every assumption about life, death, and human purpose that had been carefully constructed by centuries of dogmatic teaching. Chapter 2. The Sevenfold Constitution of Man. Blavatsky taught that human beings are far more complex than the simple body-soul duality promoted by Orthodox Christianity. Drawing from ancient Sanskrit texts and the secret teachings of the Eastern Masters, she revealed that every human possesses 7 distinct principles or bodies, each vibrating at different frequencies and serving specific functions in our spiritual evolution. The physical body, which most people identify as their complete self, is merely the densest and most temporary of these 7 principles. Above it exists the etheric double or vital body, which serves as the interface between physical matter and the more subtle realms. This etheric body is responsible for vitality and life force, and its gradual withdrawal marks the process we call death. The third principle is the astral body or emotional vehicle, the seat of desires, passions, and emotional responses. This body survives physical death and often manifests as apparitions or ghosts when strongly attached to earthly concerns. The fourth principle, known as Kama Rupa, represents the animal soul, the instinctual nature that humans share with the animal kingdom but must eventually transcend. The higher principles represent our truly spiritual nature. The fifth principle, Manas or mind, exists in 2 aspects, the lower mind connected to personality and the higher mind linked to our immortal individuality. The sixth principle, Buddhi, represents the spiritual soul or pure wisdom, while the 7th and highest principle, Atma, is the universal spirit itself, the divine spark that connects every being to the Absolute. Understanding this 7-fold constitution is crucial because it explains how consciousness transfers from one incarnation to another. Not all principles reincarnate. Only the higher aspects of mind, higher manas, the spiritual soul, buddhi, and the divine spark Atma form the immortal triad that persists through the cycles of birth and death. This knowledge transforms our understanding of personal responsibility, spiritual development, and the true purpose of human existence across multiple lifetimes. Chapter 3. The Mechanics of Reincarnation. Blavatsky's teachings reveal that reincarnation operates according to precise spiritual laws, not random chance or divine whim. The process is governed by karma, the law of cause and effect that ensures every action, thought, and intention creates consequences that must be balanced across multiple lifetimes. This cosmic justice system guarantees that no deed goes unnoticed and every soul receives exactly the experiences necessary for its evolution. When physical death occurs, consciousness does not immediately reincarnate but enters an intermediate state called devachan, a Sanskrit term describing a blissful realm where the soul reviews and assimilates the spiritual lessons of the completed lifetime. This period of rest and reflection can last anywhere from decades to centuries, depending on the spiritual development of the individual and the complexity of experiences requiring integration. During this devachanic state, the lower principles that were bound to earthly existence gradually disintegrate, while the immortal triad, higher manas, buddhi, and atma, processes the accumulated wisdom and determines the conditions needed for the next incarnation. The soul chooses its future circumstances, including family, geographical location, physical constitution, and major life challenges, based on the karmic debts that must be repaid and the lessons that must be learned. The moment of rebirth is precisely timed according to astrological influences that will provide the energetic matrix most conducive to the soul's evolutionary needs. This explains why some people are born into privilege while others face hardship, not as punishment or reward, but as the exact conditions required for their continued spiritual development. Blavatsky emphasized that this process operates with mathematical precision across vast cycles of time. Humanity as a whole is progressing through great evolutionary phases, with individual reincarnations serving the larger purpose of collective spiritual advancement. Each lifetime is both a personal opportunity for growth and a contribution to the evolution of human consciousness itself. Understanding these mechanics empowers individuals to work consciously with karmic law rather than being its unconscious victims. Chapter 4. The Law of Karma and Spiritual Justice. Karma, as revealed in Blavatsky's Theosophical teachings, is far more sophisticated than the simplified notion of good actions bringing good results. It operates as the fundamental law of harmony that maintains balance throughout the universe, ensuring that every disturbance of natural order eventually returns to equilibrium through compensatory actions across multiple lifetimes. There are several types of karma operating simultaneously. Individual karma relates to personal actions and their consequences, while family karma involves the collective debts and credits shared by groups of souls who repeatedly incarnate together. National karma affects entire peoples and civilizations, while racial karma influences the evolutionary development of human subraces across vast historical periods. Blavatsky taught that karma operates through three distinct phases: the creation of causes through thoughts, emotions, and actions, the period of maturation when these causes develop their effects, and the manifestation of consequences in appropriate circumstances. This process may span multiple lifetimes, explaining why virtuous people sometimes suffer while the wicked appear to prosper. Their karmic accounts are simply being balanced across different incarnations. The law of karma makes every individual the architect of their own destiny. Poverty, illness, relationship difficulties, and other challenges are not random misfortunes, but precisely calibrated experiences designed to teach specific lessons and burn away spiritual impurities. Similarly, talents, advantages, and favorable circumstances represent the harvest of positive actions sown in previous lifetimes. Crucially, karma is not fatalistic. While we must experience the consequences of past actions, we retain free will to determine how we respond to these experiences and what new causes we set in motion. Every moment offers the opportunity to generate positive karma through selfless service, spiritual practice, and the cultivation of wisdom. Advanced souls can accelerate their karmic resolution through conscious spiritual work, taking on more intense experiences in fewer lifetimes rather than spreading their evolution across countless incarnations. This explains the rapid spiritual progress possible through dedicated esoteric training. Chapter 5. The Evolution of Consciousness. Through rounds and races. Blavatsky revealed that human spiritual evolution operates according to vast cosmic cycles that dwarf our normal conception of time. These cycles, called rounds and root races, describe the systematic development of consciousness through different phases of material and spiritual expression across millions of years. Each round represents a complete cycle of evolution through 7 globes or planes of existence, with humanity currently in the 4th round on the 4th globe, our physical Earth. During each round, consciousness develops different capacities. The first round established the archetypal forms, the second round developed sensation, the third round brought instinct and emotion, while our current 4th round is developing rational mind and self-consciousness. Within each round, 7 root races appear in succession, each representing a distinct phase of human development. The first root race existed in an ethereal state. The second became more substantial. The third root race, Lemurian, developed physical bodies. The 4th root race, Atlantean, perfected desire and emotion, while our current 5th root race, Aryan, is developing rational thought and individual will. Each root race subdivides into 7 subraces, and our current 5th subrace is developing the mental faculties that will eventually lead to intuitive perception and spiritual insight. The coming 6th subrace will manifest enhanced psychic abilities and direct spiritual perception, while the 7th subrace will begin the transition toward the 6th root race, which will demonstrate the unified consciousness that transcends individual separation. This grand evolutionary scheme explains why human beings possess such varying levels of consciousness and spiritual development. Older souls have been evolving longer and naturally display greater wisdom and spiritual capacity, while younger souls are still developing basic mental and emotional faculties through repeated incarnations. Understanding these cycles provides perspective on both individual spiritual development and humanity's collective destiny, revealing that apparent setbacks and dark periods are actually necessary phases in the larger evolutionary process. Chapter 6. The Astral Plane and After-Death States. According to Blavatsky's esoteric teachings, death is not the end of consciousness, but merely a transition between different states of existence. Upon leaving the physical body, consciousness enters the astral plane, a subtle realm of existence that interpenetrates our physical world, but operates according to different laws governed by thought and desire rather than physical matter. The astral plane contains multiple sublevels, corresponding to different states of consciousness and spiritual development. The lower astral regions are populated by earthbound spirits still attached to material desires, as well as the shells or remnants of personalities that have not yet fully separated from earthly consciousness. These shells can persist for considerable time and often manifest as mediumistic communications, though they represent only fragmentary memories rather than the true soul. Higher regions of the astral plane provide temporary resting places for souls transitioning between incarnations. Here, consciousness reviews the experiences of the completed lifetime and begins the process of assimilating spiritual lessons. The environment is largely subjective, shaped by the beliefs, expectations, and spiritual development of the individual soul. From the astral plane, evolved consciousness eventually ascends to the devachanic state, a blissful realm of pure thought and spiritual reflection, where the soul exists in perfect happiness while processing the accumulated wisdom of earthly experience. Time in Devachan is spent in creative activity, spiritual learning, and preparation for the next incarnation. Blavatsky warned against excessive preoccupation with astral phenomena and spirit communication, explaining that contact with these lower post-mortem states could actually impede the natural progress of departing souls. She taught that the living should focus on their own spiritual development rather than attempting to maintain connections with the deceased. Understanding these after-death states removes the fear of death and provides proper perspective on mediumistic phenomena, revealing why communication with the deceased often produces confused or contradictory information. True spiritual progress requires moving beyond attachment to these intermediate states toward the higher spiritual planes. Chapter 7. The Hidden Masters and the Great White Brotherhood. One of the most controversial aspects of Blavatsky's teachings concerns her claimed contact with highly evolved spiritual beings known as the Masters of Wisdom or the Great White Brotherhood. These advanced souls, having completed their own human evolution, dedicate themselves to guiding humanity's spiritual development from behind the scenes of history. According to Theosophical doctrine, these masters represent the next stage of human evolution, individuals who have transcended the need for further incarnations, but choose to remain connected to Earth to assist in humanity's spiritual advancement. They possess fully developed spiritual powers, including telepathy, clairvoyance, and the ability to project consciousness across vast distances. The masters work primarily through developed disciples and students who can receive and transmit their teachings to the broader world. Blavatsky claimed to be one such intermediary, receiving direct instruction from Masters Moria and Kodhumi, among others. These teachings form the basis of the Theosophical philosophy and were intended to prepare humanity for the next phase of its evolutionary development. The Great White Brotherhood operates according to strict spiritual laws that prevent direct interference with human free will. They can guide and inspire, but cannot force spiritual development or prevent humanity from making mistakes necessary for growth. Their influence is typically subtle, working through the inspiration of leaders, artists, scientists, and spiritual teachers throughout history. Blavatsky taught that every spiritual tradition contains influences from this hierarchy of perfected beings, though different cultures know them by various names. The Hindu rishis, Buddhist bodhisattvas, Christian saints, and other elevated spiritual figures represent different aspects of this same evolutionary vanguard. Contact with the masters is not achieved through mediumistic practices, but through dedicated spiritual development, selfless service, and the cultivation of wisdom. Students must prove their readiness through character development and spiritual accomplishment before being entrusted with advanced teachings or direct communication with these evolved beings. Chapter 8. The Secret Doctrine and Ancient Wisdom. Blavatsky's masterwork, The Secret Doctrine, claims to reveal the fundamental principles underlying all religious and philosophical systems throughout history. This monumental text presents what she called the wisdom religion, a universal teaching that forms the esoteric core of every authentic spiritual tradition, though it has been largely forgotten or deliberately concealed by orthodox religious authorities. The Secret Doctrine rests upon three fundamental propositions that govern all existence. First, there is an omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle that underlies all manifestation, an absolute reality beyond human comprehension that serves as the source and goal of all existence. Second, there is an eternal law of periodicity that governs the appearance and disappearance of universes in endless cycles of manifestation and rest. Third, there is a fundamental unity connecting all souls with the universal oversoul, making every individual responsible for the collective evolution of humanity. These principles were allegedly preserved in the ancient Book of Jian, a sacred text written in the mysterious Senzar language and known only to the highest initiates of esoteric schools. Blavatsky claimed to have been shown portions of this text during her training in Tibet and to have received commentary from the masters regarding its deeper meanings. The secret doctrine demonstrates how these universal principles appear in various forms throughout human culture, in the cosmogonies of ancient peoples, the symbols of mystery schools, the mathematics of sacred geometry, and the philosophical systems of both East and West. Every authentic teaching tradition contains fragments of this original wisdom, though none possess it in its complete form. Understanding the secret doctrine provides the intellectual foundation for theosophical practice and reveals the scientific basis underlying apparently supernatural phenomena. It shows how spiritual evolution operates according to natural laws that are simply more subtle than those recognized by materialistic science. Blavatsky presented this teaching not as dogma to be believed, but as hypotheses to be tested through direct spiritual experience and philosophical investigation. Chapter 9. Initiation and the Path of Discipleship. Blavatsky taught that spiritual evolution could be accelerated through conscious cooperation with the natural processes of development. Rather than allowing countless incarnations to slowly unfold spiritual capacities, dedicated students could undertake the path of initiation, a systematic method of spiritual training that compresses the work of many lifetimes into a single incarnation. The path of discipleship begins with ethical purification and the development of discrimination between the real and unreal, the permanent and temporary. Students must cultivate detachment from material possessions and personal desires while developing universal compassion and the willingness to serve humanity's spiritual advancement without thought of personal gain. Intellectual development forms another crucial aspect of preparation. Students must study the fundamental principles of the wisdom religion, not merely to accumulate information, but to develop the capacity for abstract thought and philosophical understanding. This mental training prepares consciousness for direct perception of spiritual truths that transcend ordinary sensory experience. Practical spiritual exercises include meditation, concentration practices, and specific techniques for developing psychic faculties under proper guidance. However, Blavatsky warned against premature attempts to develop spiritual powers without adequate character development, as this could lead to dangerous imbalances and spiritual corruption. The ultimate goal of the discipleship path is the conscious fusion of the lower personality with the higher spiritual self, a process that typically requires several incarnations, but can be achieved more rapidly through intensive spiritual work. This integration represents the true spiritual birth that makes one an immortal individual rather than a temporary personality. Successful candidates for initiation eventually come to the attention of the masters, who provide direct guidance for the final stages of human evolution. These advanced students become links in the hierarchy of spiritual teachers, assuming responsibility for guiding newer students along the same path they have traveled. The path demands everything, but promises the greatest treasure: conscious immortality and the capacity to serve humanity's spiritual evolution as a member of the Great White Brotherhood. Chapter 10. The Development of Psychic Powers. Blavatsky's teachings regarding psychic abilities differ dramatically from popular spiritualism and mediumship. She distinguished between lower psychic phenomena, which operate through the astral body and connect with relatively crude spiritual forces, and higher spiritual powers that represent the natural faculties of evolved consciousness. Lower psychism includes mediumship, automatic writing, and communication with astral entities. While these phenomena are genuine, Blavatsky warned that they often impede spiritual development by encouraging dependence on external guidance rather than cultivating inner spiritual authority. Many mediums become passive channels for astral influences rather than developing their own spiritual discrimination and will. True spiritual powers emerge naturally as consciousness evolves and the higher principles of human nature become active. These include telepathy between developed souls, clairvoyant perception of spiritual truths, and the ability to work consciously on higher planes of existence. Such faculties represent the restoration of capacities that humanity possessed in earlier evolutionary phases and will universally manifest in future root races. The safe development of psychic abilities requires simultaneous advancement in ethics, philosophy, and practical spiritual discipline. Character purification ensures that enhanced powers will be used for spiritual service rather than personal advantage. Philosophical understanding provides the framework for interpreting psychic experiences correctly. Practical training develops the discrimination necessary to distinguish between genuine spiritual perception and astral illusion. Blavatsky emphasized that psychic development should never be pursued as an end in itself, but only as a natural consequence of overall spiritual advancement. Students who focus primarily on acquiring supernatural powers often sacrifice true spiritual progress for relatively trivial abilities that may actually hinder their long-term evolution. The ultimate psychic faculty is the development of buddhi manas, the integration of spiritual wisdom with purified mind that allows direct perception of truth without dependence on external sources of information. This represents the goal of human evolution and the foundation of true spiritual knowledge. Chapter 11. The synthesis of science, religion, and philosophy. One of Blavatsky's most significant contributions was her demonstration that science, religion, and philosophy represent different approaches to understanding the same fundamental truths. The ancient wisdom tradition synthesizes these three domains of human inquiry, showing how they complement rather than contradict each other when properly understood. Science investigates the laws governing physical manifestation and is gradually discovering the subtle forces and principles that Theosophical teaching has long maintained. The doctrine of evolution, the conservation of energy, the mathematical basis of natural phenomena, and the unity underlying apparent diversity all find parallels in esoteric teaching. Future scientific discoveries will continue to validate Theosophical principles as researchers develop more refined methods of investigation. Religion represents humanity's intuitive recognition of spiritual realities and the higher purposes underlying existence. However, dogmatic religious teaching often distorts these insights by presenting symbolic truths as literal facts and encouraging blind faith rather than personal spiritual experience. The esoteric core of every religion contains authentic spiritual wisdom, but this is typically concealed behind exoteric forms designed for the spiritual capacity of ordinary believers. Philosophy provides the intellectual framework for integrating scientific knowledge and religious insight into coherent understanding. However, purely academic philosophy often becomes abstract speculation divorced from practical spiritual application. Theosophical philosophy differs by being based on direct spiritual experience, verified across multiple cultural traditions and historical periods. The synthesis of these three approaches produces a comprehensive worldview that satisfies both intellectual rigor and spiritual aspiration. Students can pursue scientific investigation while maintaining religious devotion and philosophical understanding, recognizing that each domain reveals different aspects of the same underlying reality. This integration is essential for humanity's next evolutionary phase, which will require the development of both rational intelligence and spiritual intuition. The artificial separation between science, religion, and philosophy has hindered human development by fragmenting consciousness into competing perspectives rather than recognizing their fundamental unity. Chapter 12. The Future of Human Evolution. Blavatsky's teachings reveal that humanity stands at a crucial threshold in its evolutionary development. The current fifth root race is approaching the midpoint of its cycle, and the seeds of the sixth root race are already being planted in the most advanced members of humanity. This transition will fundamentally transform human consciousness and social organization over the coming millennia. The sixth root race will manifest enhanced spiritual faculties as standard human attributes rather than exceptional psychic gifts. Telepathic communication will supplement and eventually replace verbal language. Direct spiritual perception will make religious intermediaries unnecessary. The artificial boundaries between nations, races, and social classes will dissolve as humanity recognizes its fundamental unity. This evolutionary transition cannot be rushed through external efforts, but must unfold according to natural spiritual laws. However, individuals can prepare themselves and assist the process by developing the qualities that will characterize future humanity: universal compassion, intuitive wisdom, and the integration of spiritual consciousness with practical intelligence. The Theosophical movement represents humanity's first organized effort to consciously cooperate with this evolutionary process. By studying the ancient wisdom, practicing spiritual discipline, and working for the betterment of humanity, Theosophists prepare themselves to serve as pioneers and guides for the coming transformation. Blavatsky predicted that the next great spiritual teacher, equivalent to Buddha or Christ, would appear when humanity had sufficiently developed to receive advanced teaching. This coming teacher will not establish a new religion, but will reveal the universal principles underlying all authentic spiritual traditions. The challenges facing modern civilization, environmental destruction, social inequality, and spiritual materialism, represent the birth pangs of the new evolutionary phase. These difficulties force humanity to develop the cooperation and wisdom necessary for survival and continued development. Understanding this evolutionary perspective provides hope and direction for individual spiritual work while revealing the larger purpose behind current world conditions and personal spiritual struggles. The teachings of Helena Blavatsky offer a revolutionary understanding of human nature and spiritual evolution that challenges conventional Western thought while providing practical guidance for spiritual development. These ancient wisdoms, once banned and suppressed, are now available to anyone willing to study and apply them seriously. Which aspect of theosophical teaching resonates most strongly with your own spiritual understanding? The sevenfold constitution of human nature, the mechanics of karma and reincarnation, or perhaps the vision of humanity's evolutionary future? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more explorations of ancient wisdom and esoteric knowledge that can transform our understanding of existence itself.